And welcome back to the Zanpakuto creation series. Today's Zanpakuto creation comes to us from Carson Heineko, who asked the question, what is Orochimaru Zanpakuto? Like I said, expect a lot of Naruto characters on here. Orochimaru is a very interesting one. Because as I kind of said, not every character's abilities translate into a Zanpakuto. And again, just to reiterate, this is just my opinion on what the Zanpakuto is. If you think different, that's cool, absolutely. Moving on. But not everyone's abilities translate into a Zanpakuto. You don't take Naruto and say, okay, Naruto has Wind Style, Rasengan, Shadow Clone, all that. How do I put that into a sword? That's not how a Zanpakuto works. A Zanpakuto is a reflection of who you are, your soul. It's just a part of you. Now, there are examples where I think that is very apt. And Orochimaru, I think, is actually one of those examples. So first and foremost, I think his sword takes the form of a standard katana. I think that's just given. Most Zanpakuto, about 80 to 5, almost 90% of Zanpakuto are basically just standard katanas. There are Zanpakuto that are more like a wakizashi or a tanto, but overall they're just standard katanas. And I think Orochimaru would be that way. However, the type of Zanpakuto it is, I think, would be different than, say, most other ones. There are a couple general types of Zanpakuto. There's a melee type, which is predominantly used for combat. Now, there are subtypes too. Melees with like a Kido ability, all that. But melee types are used generally for physical combat. Kido types, which have a special ability of some kind, usually related to a Kido effect. Then you have elemental types, which are using a specific element, fire, water, air, ice, whatever. But there's also, it's another rare type you see, the living creature type Zanpakuto. Now, the living creature type Zanpakuto we have seen on occasion. We have seen with Minazuki, which is a living creature. The sword turns into a living creature. Yajiro's, because Yajiro is actually, Zarashi is very weird, and even Isane said, I don't understand how that sword can do that. But it is still you could still make an argument, it summons two creatures. Atu Rindo, the new 7th Division Vice Captain, seems to have something that's akin to a living creature type where it summons creatures. Even Tenkin is technically a living creature type because it is summoning the appendages of a being. Its Bangai is the full thing. Orochimaru, I do believe, would have a living creature type. Now, what would this be? Well, obviously it would be a snake. Specifically, though, to release his sword, it'd be shed your skin. Now, the name would be White Serpent. And the reason for that is Orochimaru is very much a snake. Let's not mince words. He is a snake. And I feel as though it needs to be a snake-based Zanpakuto. Now, White Serpent, technically speaking, Hebi is actually the name for snake, but Orochi is too. So you could actually make this either Shiro Hebi or Shiro Orochi. I like Shiro Orochi better. That just rolls off the tongue a bit better. And I think it would work a bit better because we have seen the word Orochi used in, I believe, oh crap. What is the Visor girl's name again? From the 12th Division, she bothers Shinji all the time. And it's bothering to hell. I can't remember. Either way, Shiro Orochi. Now, what actually happens is the blade turns into about a 20-foot long snake-like whip almost. It's still got a blade attached, the handle attached to it. And Orochimaru can still manipulate it if he needs to. However, he can basically use it like a whip if he needs it. However, the snake is sentient in its own right. It can be used on its own. It's still a snake, though. It has a venomous bite, and the blade itself is now, drenched in a poison. Something probably akin to like Mayuri's, where it's not necessarily lethal, at least not in small doses. But if you get enough of it, it could kill you. And And more than anything, what it's designed for is the scales flex out into these little blades. Basically, so he can flex out and basically just kind of grind and just kind of like Samahade does, and just shred the opponent into pieces. He can wrap around and just kind of like grind, shred, and just mince something, into nothing, just flakes of meat, basically, if they're not careful. But that being said, it's still by all counts a snake. It's still while it's still a blade, it's still a snake. It's got the durability of a blade, but because it's more malleable now, it loses a bit of that structural integrity, say like metal has. So physical attacks would still be a problem, especially strong enough physical attacks. It also has no true, defense against, elemental attacks at all. If like a Cero were coming at Orochimaru would have to basically use some sort of like whip style technique to kind of like slice up the Cero beam to like keep him from blowing him up. So that's the Shikai. But what is the Bankai of this blade? Well, the Bankai, the Bankai would be the white serpent who eats his tail. Or Shippo o... And again, this is all from Google Translate, so this is not going to be correct in terms of what the actual name would be. Shippo o Tabero... Tabero Shiro Orochi. So basically, instead of Shiro Orochi, it's now Shippo o Tabero Shiro Orochi. And what this basically would do is basically turn the snake into the Orochimaru's giant white snake form. Now, granted, it wouldn't look like that per se. It would look a bit more like it'd still be white, but the snakes on there are all still blades and all this stuff. Basically, what it does, it's basically just a larger version of the Shikai, to be fair. However, the Bankai, if the Bankai bites its tail, all the smaller snakes separate and would be basically akin to the Shikai, but coming in a giant mass swarm and just completely coming off of the giant snake. Now, just as with the Shikai, this Bankai would not have any sort of real defense against elemental attacks. Also, I think the Bankai's real weakness would be that the main body is now, the Bankai, the snake, is now exposed. Whereas all of the other snakes are blades, the main body of the Bankai is still vulnerable. And it still represents the fact that Orochimaru, for all of his strength, had no real defense against death. He had no real, he was not infallible. He was still immortal. And, for all of his strength, he was still weak in the end. And ultimately, Orochimaru would actually be the first one to acknowledge that. Like, he acknowledged a lot of his faults, and he didn't necessarily turn good by Boruto, but he wasn't anywhere near as evil as he was. He actually had he was no more of a chaotic evil, or not even chaotic, just lawful, neutral, and then chaotic. He was no longer a kind of chaotic evil. He was more kind of like a neutral evil, where it's like, oh yeah, I still do some bad things, but I've kind of mellowed out a little bit. And, I've worked out a thing with a leaf. We're all good. It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I feel like the snake aspect really does translate itself well to Orochimaru. I think because it's just kind of who he is naturally, that I think this is one of those cases where abilities do translate to the sword. So ultimately, that is my thoughts on what Orochimaru's Zanpakuto would be like. Let me know if you agree or if you disagree. Do you like this? Do you hate it? What would you do differently if you would do it differently? Put in the comments below and let me know. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll review it at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you folks later.